Hey, it's Eleanor, and welcome back to a behind the scenes video of the podcast Power Presence Position. This is going to be episode 468. Yes, 468, where we talk all about how to solve any problem in business using a really clear philosophy and approach about solving that problem, and then also a very clear outline on how to take action without getting depleted. So if you are a video watcher and you haven't had a chance to watch our previous video, which is about that three-step approach where I outlined the scientific method and how to use the scientific method to help you solve problems more effectively in your business, you're going to want to go check out episode 467 of Power Presence Position. And if you did watch this and you're back for more, congratulations, you highly intelligent person. I'm going to dive into the recording for that podcast episode really soon. And again, it's behind the scenes. It's totally raw. So you're going to hear me giving instruction and stuff to my podcast production colleagues. You'll hear me shuffling through my notes, all of it. We're leaving it in to give you a taste behind the scenes sense of how we do this podcast show up in here. All right, so let's get started with episode 468. How do you continuously take action in your business without getting depleted? This is a question that many of my entrepreneurial clients and colleagues struggle with, and it's certainly something that I've experienced in my career as an entrepreneur. You know, there is definitely a side of being a business owner that is all about taking inspired action, creating forward momentum, getting stuff done, putting in the work. But increasingly, there's so many women who are tired. They're just sick of how that depletes them. And they're wondering, is there a way I can take action in my company, move things forward without this constant sense that I'm doing, and depleting my energy stores? So this podcast episode is really going to help you address this. It's the second part in a series that we're doing on how to solve any problem in business. If you haven't listened to episode 467, where I outline how to leverage the power of the scientific method to solve any problem in business, go ahead and listen to that. In part 2, which is what you're listening to right now, I'm really walking through a 4-step process for how to take consistent action in your business without getting depleted. Let's dive in. Okay, Angela, we're going to do a musical transition. Actually, sorry, we're going to go right into the intro here. Then we'll come back. Hello, and welcome back to episode 468 of Power Presence Position. It's Eleanor, and I'm really delighted to be here with you and really delighted to be in part 2 of this mini series that we put together on how to solve any problem in business. So part 1, you'll remember, I walked you through how you can leverage the power of the scientific method, hypothesis, antithesis, thesis, to help you have a really strong framework to make decisions more effectively as an entrepreneur. And in today's episode, I want to really focus on that antithesis. You remember, hypothesis is where you define the problem clearly and then take a stab, an educated guess on what you think the cause of that problem is. Antithesis is where you start to, or not where you start, where you do create experiments to try to solve that problem, right? To try to prove or disprove your hypothesis. And this is the antithesis stage, is where you actually take action. And this is the part that I definitely see as a coach to entrepreneurs and as an entrepreneur myself. This taking action part is the place where you're likely to get depleted if you don't manage yourself effectively. And so that's why I think this sort of notion of depletion is why we hear so much conversation about burnout. We hear so much conversation about time management. We hear so much conversation about hustle culture. And so today's podcast episode is really about laying out a clear 4-part series of steps to help you take action without getting depleted. Okay. And so, because here's the thing, a lot of our culture around taking action is very sort of bro influenced. Get in there, roll up your sleeves, roll them up to your elbows, get in there, take action, da 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 da. And, I was talking to a client recently. She's like, look, I have no problem doing that. I've spent my life doing that. But I don't know that me continuously acting is actually helping me. I think there's another approach. And that's what this podcast episode is all about. It's really for those of you who have no problem taking action, but you're at this point in your life where you realize that that approach isn't actually serving you. You know how to take action. You want to take smart action. You understand that you can accomplish so much more when you think and plan, when you prepare, when you are organized enough to leverage the efforts of other people, when you co-create, So I wanted to kind of outline this for you. And this is something that over the course of the last couple of years, I have really worked on a lot because, I have been enormously productive in my life. I do know how to take action, like I know so many of you do. But as my vision grows and expands, it has outstripped my capacity to do it all myself. And it's not just about delegating anymore. It's about shifting my relationship with my to-do list, right? It's about shift. It's not just about making a list of everything that I have to do, plotting it into the calendar and getting it done. There's all of that is great, but there's something that happens before that, right? And so that's what this 4-step sort of process for taking action is all about. And I have to credit Hiro Boga with step 1, which is this idea of creating the container. I love Hiro, and she talks about this idea of creating energetic containers for things. And it's a little mystical. I'm not going to put words into her mouth, but she talks about that. And it really influenced this idea of creating a container. So I just want to give intellectual credit where it is due. So let's dive into the 4-step process for taking action consistently without depleting yourself. And so you can use this when you're in the antithesis stage of the scientific model for solving any problem in business. But honestly, it can really help guide you through any place in your business where you need to take action. If you are in that phase or life stage where you are all about doing, and it's not depleting you, don't bother with this approach, right? Don't fix something that's not broken, right? Just wanted to be really clear. But if you are in a stage of your development as an entrepreneur where you are finding that action is becoming depleting and you never seem to be able to rest up enough, then I strongly encourage you to give this podcast episode a good, hard listen. All right, let's dive in. Okay, Angela, we're going to do a musical transition, and the musical transition is the song Future Tech. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so let me walk you through the 4 steps to taking action without depleting yourself. And let me kind of go back, for years and years, I would start my week with some form of a to-do list. I'd write down all the things that I needed to do. I would usually plot them into my calendar, and then I would apply base of pants to seat of chair, press firmly and try to get them done. And almost never have I ever completed a to-do list at the end of the week. And then I would just start to feel depleted. I would just frequently feel depleted. And I started to get disillusioned and frustrated that all this energy that I was expending I was getting some things done, but I felt like there was just something wanting in my process. And I also felt like, I don't know, like, when am I ever going to get past this stage of feeling depleted because of my to-do list? What if I hire more people? What if I work on different things? What if I stay in my zone of genius 100% of the time? And those things all had an impact, right? But at the end of the day, I felt that there was a way that I was approaching doing things and taking action that was something that needed to be refreshed, and I needed to take another look at it. So I did a lot of work. I did a lot of reflection. I started reading books. I started talking to people, studying different approaches. And I kind of created an approach that I have been fine tuning. And honestly, I'm still on the path of using this and fine tuning it, but it works really well for me and has started to really create incredible momentum for me personally. It feels good and fun. And I find that I'm able to move through things much faster, have better results. It's more fun and it takes a lot less energy. It actually gives energy. Okay. I know it sounds like the miracle approach, but it kind of is. So let me walk through the steps. When I'm taking action, 4 things happen. Number 1, I'm going to, for whatever thing I want to take action on, number 1, I'm going to create the container. Number 2, I'm going to clarify the intention. Number 3, I'm going to clear the obstacles. And number 4, I'm going to co-create the result. Okay, so these are the 4 steps. Create the container, clarify the intention, clear the obstacles, co-create the result. So I'm going to walk you through a super practical example. We're going to walk through each of these 4 steps, but I'm going to walk you through a really practical example of doing this so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, Angela, let's do a musical transition. Future Tech is the song. Okay, so I told you about having a to-do list, right? So you start out, you've got this to-do list of things that you know you need to do. So recently I had the same to-do list, and on my to-do list was 4 excellent podcasts. Okay, I knew I needed to create some podcasts and get ahead of my podcasting game. I've been working on a lot of other things, co-creating and creating a ton of things this summer, and I hadn't been setting aside the time to do podcasts, and so I'm a little behind, and I knew I wanted to put together 4 podcasts. So that was on my to-do list, and it's a pretty normal thing for a podcaster to have on your to-do list. Hey, you got to make those 4 podcasts. And the old me would just go make them, right? I'd just think through what I wanted to do, and I would just go freaking make them. But the new me wants to continuously use a different type of approach. So the first thing that I had to do was create the container. And I learned this from Hiro Boga, who is one of my mentors. And she taught me how to create an energetic container. And again, this is her teaching, not mine. So I'm just going to tell you what I do. When I'm creating an energetic container for something, I think about the thing that I'm trying to create or the action that I'm trying to take. And I actually close my eyes and imagine that distinct piece of work, that distinct thing, it could be a new hire, it could be a new project. I've got a container going for my book. Like I have a bunch of little containers, right? And what it is it's like this energetic vessel, right? So it exists in my imagination and my spirit. It's a vessel. And I imagine this vessel and I think about the properties that this vessel needs in order to produce the best result, right? And so for me, I know when I was thinking about these 4 podcasts, I started to get a vision of something that I wanted to do. And it was about exploring the feminine in business, right? So it's an idea. And so that's part of the container, the feminine in business. And I think about the properties that this vessel needs to be imbued with in order to create the space for me to produce my best result. And the 4 properties were this vessel is imbued with simplicity. I want it to be simple. This vessel is imbued with honor. So the work that I'm going to do, what I produce, will honor the topic and, the subject matter that I'm working on. The 3rd piece was co-creation. I don't need to do this by myself. I am going to co-create this with other people. This is huge because sometimes I try to do everything myself, right? So co-creation. And the 4th part is ease. It's going to be easy. It's not going to be overly hard. Ease is a part of this, okay? So that's step one. You create the container. And this is the part that we always rush through. I have a history of rushing through creating the container. I just expect myself to create results. But think about it. If you were to make a beautiful meal, that has to happen inside a container, right? Which is a beautiful crock pot. If you want to have a really lovely meal with somebody that you love, you're going to set the table and have a container. It could be a picnic basket. It could be a plate with nice settings, but you're creating the container for the experience to happen. And this was something I never did. And now I really have brought this into a practice where I create a container. The second part of this too, is it's about learning the practice of giving yourself the space to do the things that you need to do, rather than just jumping to doing the things you need to do. It's about creating the space that you need to do those things. Okay. So that's creating the container. And so I really it was like, 10, 15 minutes where I literally was kind of thinking through the container with which, like, what is this vessel? What kind of energy am I going to, and intention I'm going to put into this vessel to make it an incredible container to create these 4 podcasts. Okay. So that's step 1. All right, Angela, let's do a musical transition, and we're going to do a gentle transition, the song for this one. All right. So once you've created the container, and I know that's going to be totally different, it's probably a little out of, some of you are like, I create energetic containers all day long. And others of you are going to, it's quite new, but it's huge, right? So that's kind of the first thing. Then the second step is to clarify the intention. And again, beforehand, if I saw 4 podcasts, I would just jump into creating the podcasts. What are they? Right? You just jump right into doing mode. But clarifying the intention, I had to ask myself, okay, I have this vision for a series that's all about exploring the feminine in business. And so I wanted to clarify the intention, and could I set a clear intention with this series, like with this podcast? What's my intention for the show? And so I really thought about it. I really, really thought about what I wanted. And I thought about why I was doing it, and, I personally think this whole idea, I have been kind of obsessed with the feminine since reading The Heroine's Journey, which is a really powerful book in sort of the feminist canon. But I find, honestly, if I'm being honest, that I don't personally see a lot of people out there who talk about the feminine in a way that feels practical or relevant to me. So it's practical and relevant to others, but haven't really ever found, or I've only found a very few people who talk about it in a way that I can really relate to. And I think it's a shame, because I think there's so many women entrepreneurs out there who could benefit from being more educated, from being more exposed to the feminine in business, but there's nobody really out there for us to listen to. So I really took time to think through what's my intention, and realized that my intention is to reach 10,000 women with a meaningful and cohesive statement on the feminine in business, right? I'm very clear now about what my intention is. So that's the container, and then the intention. Remember, I haven't done anything yet, but I have accomplished a lot, because I've created a container, and inside that container, I've placed a very clear intention. And so that moves us to the next step. All right. And so we'll get there next. Okay, Angela, can you do the musical transition, a gentle transition song? All right. So step 3 in this process of taking action without getting depleted, you're like, okay, when do we get to doing? Not yet, because the first thing we need to do is clear obstacles. So step 3 in the process is to clear the obstacles. Again, before you're doing anything, a lot of times I would work 3 times as hard because there were obstacles. So let me give you an example. I'd create a podcast on my to-do list, but maybe there were obstacles in the way. Maybe one obstacle is I haven't given myself enough time. My throat is really dry, so I have to do an audio recording, but my throat is dry. So I really started to take some time to get clear on what the obstacles were that would get in the way first, to really clear those away. And here were the obstacles that I came up with for this project, for the series of podcasts that I wanted to create. One was not having a clear vision. Number two was doing it all myself. Number three was rushing. Number four was not creating time and space. Those were the obstacles that I kind of saw. And so, in order to clear the obstacles, what did I need to do? And of course, I'll repeat the obstacles: not having a clear vision of what I want to say, having to do it all myself. That's an obstacle. Rushing is an obstacle. Not creating time and space. These were all things that felt like, these were all the obstacles that made this task seem harder, right? So I started to think through it and I realized, okay, not having a clear vision, how would I clear that obstacle? And it was like, by getting clear and by having a clear storyline. What's the storyline that I want to say? And then another thing that I realized was a clear relationship. So what's my relationship to this material? Until I am clear on my relationship to this material, that's an obstacle that's going to prevent me or hold me back from telling the story with ease. And then the third part was, okay, I think another obstacle, and if I'm going to be rushed or not having enough time and space, is mapping out a very clear timeline for when I want these podcasts to be released. Okay. So then, that's the third thing. I just cleared the obstacles, really thinking through what are the obstacles that are getting in your way and can you clear those away? So that's the third part. Every one of these releases energy, by the way. It doesn't consume energy, it starts to release energy. So that brings us to step 4 of the process, how to do without getting depleted. And we're going to get to that next. All right, Angela, we'll do musical transition, which is a gentle transition. Okay, you've created the container, you've clarified the intention, you've cleared the obstacles. Now it's time to co-create the result. So back in the day, those of us doers would just get down to it and start apply base of pants to seat of chair, press firmly and start acting, right? And one of the things that I've realized is that used to work for me, but now it doesn't, because my company is bigger, my vision is bigger, and I just don't need to do everything on my own. And so co-creating is really about, okay, I'm clear on everything. Now I've got to go about the result. Who can I engage to help me produce this result? What do I want from them? And then what are the things that I need to do myself? Okay. And so that, again, we're thinking who first? Who first? So many women are overworking, right? Because you're trying to do everything. You're trying to constantly produce all the results yourself. And if you think about it, my intention was to reach 10,000 women with a meaningful, cohesive statement on the feminine in business. So I can enlist help to help me reach 10,000 women. And I can also enlist help to create a meaningful and cohesive statement. I do not have to do either of those two things alone. There's elements of it that I do alone, and there's elements where I bring people in. So I thought through that. Who do I bring in to co-create this with me? What would they do and what would I do? And from there, when I sat with all of those things, the container, the intention, the obstacles, and the co-creation around the result, I came up with a very, very simple plan to bring that together and make extraordinary progress. Okay, so there you have it, a 4-step plan. Create the container, clarify the intention, clear the obstacles, co-create the result. This is a way to take action that is much less depleting than what we normally do, which is sit down and do it. And the reason is there's a time in our life where sitting down and doing things makes a ton of sense, but there becomes a time in your life where you are so much wiser. Your intention is so much more powerful, and taking the time to step back, get clear, create space for yourself, set a clear intention, remove obstacles, and enlist people to help you. That's what leadership is. And many of you are leading your companies from a place of depletion rather than from a place of true leadership, where you are acting without doing everything. You are moving through people. You are creating with people. So I hope that's helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys here next week, same bad time, same bad place. Okay, take care, everybody.